I felt the cold ceramic urn slip from my hands as my sister's palm struck my chest. Then I watched, frozen, as my late husband's ashes scattered across the funeral home floor, dusting my black dress, my shoes, the flowers I'd chosen so carefully that morning. Linda stood over me, her face twisted with rage, and said the words I'll never forget. "You never deserved him. You never deserved any of this." My nephew Marcus pulled out his phone. He was filming. He was actually filming his aunt standing there, covered in her husband's remains, and he was laughing. I looked around the room. 40 people. Neighbors who'd known Robert and me for 30 years. Church members who'd watched us grow old together. My own children, frozen in their seats. Not one person moved to help me. Not one person told Linda to stop. I bent down slowly. My knees creaked. I'm 68 years old, and I was on my hands and knees at my husband's funeral, trying to gather what was left of the man I'd loved for 43 years. The ashes were so fine, slipping through my fingers like sand. Linda's voice came from above me. "Get up, Margaret. Stop being so dramatic. We need to talk about the house." I stood. I brushed the ashes from my dress as best I could. I looked at my sister, really looked at her, and I saw something in her eyes I'd never noticed before. Not just jealousy. Something darker. Something that had been there for a very long time, waiting. I didn't say a word. I walked out of that funeral home with ash still in my hair, and I drove straight to Samuel Morrison's office. Samuel had been our family attorney for 25 years. He was also Robert's best friend. That one phone call changed everything. But let me back up. Let me tell you how I got here. Growing up in Charleston, Linda and I were inseparable. She was 3 years younger, and after our mama died when I was 16, I raised her. I worked 2 jobs to keep us fed, to keep a roof over our heads. Our daddy had left when Linda was just a baby, so it was just the 2 of us. I met Robert when I was 22. He was a mechanic, working at his father's garage. Nothing fancy, but he was steady, kind. When I told Linda I was engaged, I thought she'd be happy for me. Instead, she cried for 3 days, said I was abandoning her, but I didn't abandon her. After Robert and I married, Linda lived with us for 2 years until she met Jeff. Jeff worked construction, made decent money. They got married 6 months after they met. I thought she'd finally be happy. She wasn't. Over the years, I watched Linda's marriage crumble. Jeff drank. He couldn't keep a job. They had 2 boys, Marcus and Dylan, and Linda struggled to feed them. Robert and I helped where we could. We paid for the boys' school supplies. We bought them clothes. One Christmas, we bought all their presents because Linda and Jeff couldn't afford any. Robert worked hard. He eventually bought his father's garage, built it into something successful. We were never wealthy, but we were comfortable. We had a nice house in a good neighborhood. We took 1 vacation a year. We saved for retirement. Linda resented every bit of it. She'd make little comments. "Must be nice to have a husband who actually works," or "Some of us can't all live in fancy houses." Our house wasn't fancy. It was a 3-bedroom ranch we'd bought in 1985. But to Linda, it might as well have been a mansion. When our children were young, they played together every weekend. My daughter Grace and my son Thomas loved their cousins. But as they grew older, I started noticing things. Linda would tell Marcus and Dylan that we thought we were better than them, that we looked down on them because they were poor. It wasn't true. But children believe what their parents tell them. 5 years ago, Jeff finally left, walked out one day and never came back. Linda was devastated, but also relieved. The boys were grown by then, both in their 20s. Marcus was working at a warehouse. Dylan had moved to Atlanta. Linda sold their house, the one Robert and I had helped them buy, and moved into a small apartment. She worked at the hospital as a clerk. It wasn't much, but it was enough. Robert retired 3 years ago. We were planning to travel, to enjoy the years we had left. Then last October, he collapsed in the garden. Massive heart attack. He died before the ambulance arrived. I've never felt pain like that. 43 years of marriage, and suddenly I was alone. Grace and Thomas were wonderful. They came home, helped me with the arrangements, stayed for 2 weeks. But they had their own lives. Grace has 3 children in Portland. Thomas teaches at a university in Boston. After they left, I was truly alone for the first time in my life. Linda started visiting more. At first, I was grateful. She'd bring soup, help me sort through Robert's things, sit with me while I cried. I thought maybe, finally, we'd found our way back to being sisters again. Then the questions started. Did Robert leave a will? How much was the life insurance? What are you going to do with the garage? It must be worth a lot. This house is too big for one person. I should have seen it then. But I was grieving. I wasn't thinking clearly. Robert had left everything to me. The house, the garage, his retirement accounts, the life insurance. It wasn't a fortune, but it was enough that I'd never have to worry. I could stay in my home, maybe help with my grandchildren's college funds, maybe even take that trip to Ireland we'd always planned. 3 weeks after Robert died, Linda came to my house with papers, legal documents. She spread them across my kitchen table, the same table where Robert and I had eaten breakfast every morning for 38 years. I found these in Mama's things, Linda said. Daddy left us both that land in Beaufort. Remember? But it was in Mama's name when she died, which means it should have been split between us. But you handled Mama's estate. You sold that land and kept all the money. I stared at her. Linda, that land sold for $8,000 in Mutngin Jinchumbe Muitam. I used it to bury Mama and pay off her medical bills. There wasn't anything left. That's not what these documents say. The papers were photocopies, barely legible. But Linda insisted they proved I'd stolen from her. She wanted half of everything Robert left me. She said it was only fair. I'd taken from her once, now it was time to make it right. That's insane, I told her. Robert's estate has nothing to do with Mama's land from 45 years ago. Linda's face changed, hardened. I'm not asking, Margaret. I'm telling you. Either you give me what's fair, or I'll take you to court. You can't contest Robert's will. You're not family. I'm contesting Mama's estate, and once I prove you stole from me, I'll go after Robert's money as restitution. I asked her to leave. She gathered her papers and walked out. I didn't hear from her for a month. Then I got a letter from a lawyer. Linda was contesting our mother's estate, claiming I'd mismanaged her inheritance, and demanding restitution of $300,000. $300,000 from an $8,000 land sale in Mutngin Jinchumbe Muitam. I called Samuel immediately. He read the complaint and shook his head. This is ridiculous, Margaret. It'll never hold up. The statute of limitations alone. Can she tie up Robert's estate? Samuel hesitated. She can try. It might delay things. But ultimately, you'll win. I couldn't afford to wait. I had bills to pay. Robert's business partner wanted to buy the garage, but if the estate was tied up in litigation, the sale couldn't go through. Linda knew this. She was counting on it. She started calling me every day. Just give me 100,000, Margaret. That's all I'm asking. Then we can forget all this. I hung up on her. She showed up at my house at midnight, banging on the door, screaming about how I'd stolen her birthright. My neighbors called the police. When the officer arrived, Linda turned on the tears, told him I was her elderly sister who was confused, hiding money, refusing to share our inheritance. The officer looked at me with pity, like I was the problem. That's when I realized Linda wasn't just greedy. She was desperate. I started wondering why. I hired a private investigator. His name was Tom Chen, former police detective, now doing private work. I felt guilty doing it, investigating my own sister. But something wasn't right. Tom found out Linda had gambling debts, serious ones. She owed money to people who didn't take no for an answer. She'd been borrowing from predatory lenders, paying back one with another. She was drowning, and she was looking for a lifeboat. She thought I was that lifeboat. The lawsuit dragged on. Months passed. My children begged me to just settle, to give her something so we could move on. But it wasn't about the money anymore. It was about principle. Linda was lying, manipulating, trying to steal from me using the court system. I wouldn't let her. Then Robert's funeral came. I'd postponed it while the estate was being settled, waiting to afford the service he deserved. Grace and Thomas came home. Even Dylan drove up from Atlanta, but Marcus came with Linda. The service was beautiful. The pastor spoke about Robert's generosity, his quiet strength. People shared stories. I felt surrounded by love, by community. Then it was time for the burial. I'd decided to have Robert cremated, to keep his ashes in our garden where he'd spent so many happy hours. We were in the funeral home's gathering room. I was holding the urn, preparing to say my final goodbye before taking him home. Linda walked up to me. "We need to talk about the house." "Not now, Linda." "Yes, now. You've been avoiding me. You've turned my own children against me. You've poisoned everyone against me. Just like you did when we were kids." People were starting to stare. Thomas stepped forward. "Aunt Linda, please, not here. Stay out of this," Linda snapped. Then she turned back to me. "I'm not leaving until you agree to settle. There's nothing to settle." That's when she lunged, shoved me hard in the chest. The urn flew from my hands. It hit the floor, the lid popped off, and Robert's ashes scattered everywhere. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. I watched the ash settle on the carpet, on my shoes, on the flowers. All I could think was, I broke my promise. I promised I'd take him home. And I broke him instead. Linda stood over me, and that's when she said it. "You never deserved him. You never deserved any of this." Marcus was filming, laughing. People gasped, but nobody stopped him. I got on my hands and knees. I tried to gather the ashes, but they were so fine, disappearing into the carpet fibers, impossible to collect. Linda kept talking. "We're going to settle this today. You're going to give me what I deserve, or everyone will know what kind of person you really are. Selfish, greedy. You stole from your own sister, and you've been lying about it for 40 years. I stood up. I looked at her, and I knew. This wasn't about money anymore. This was about destroying me. I left without a word, drove straight to Samuel's office. He was there, even though it was Saturday. I think he'd been waiting for my call. "She threw Robert's ashes on the floor," I told him. My voice was shaking, in front of everyone. And Marcus filmed it. Samuel's face went dark. "Margaret, I need to tell you something. I've been doing some digging, and I know about the gambling debts. It's not just gambling. Linda has been forging documents. Those papers she showed you about your mother's estate, they're fake. She created them herself, and she's done it before. There are 3 other people in Charleston who filed police reports against her for fraud." I sat down. "What?" "She's been running this scam for years, finds elderly people who recently lost a spouse, claims there was some old family debt or shared property, produces fake documents, and pressures them to settle. Most people just pay to make her go away." But one man fought back. He pressed charges. "The case is still working its way through the system. Why didn't you tell me?" "I only confirmed it this week. I was going to call you Monday." He paused. "Margaret, this changes everything. We can have her arrested for fraud. And with what happened today at the funeral, the ashes," I whispered. "Did anyone record it besides her son?" I thought about all those people, all those phones. Someone must have. Samuel made a call. Then another. Then another. By Monday morning, we had 3 videos from 3 different angles, all showing Linda attacking me, the urn falling, the ashes scattering, all showing her standing over me, threatening me, trying to extort money from me at my husband's funeral. Samuel called the prosecutor's office, the detective investigating Linda's other fraud cases. Wednesday morning, Linda was arrested. They charged her with fraud, attempted extortion, and assault. Marcus was charged as an accomplice. The evidence was overwhelming. The fake documents, the video from the funeral, testimony from her other victims. The prosecutor offered her a plea deal, 5 years probation, full restitution to her victims, and a permanent restraining order keeping her away from me. Linda refused. She wanted to go to trial. She still thought she could win, thought she could convince a jury that I was the villain in this story. The trial lasted 3 days. I had to sit there and listen to Linda lie. She claimed I'd manipulated Robert into leaving her out of his will. She claimed I'd isolated her, turned her children against her, stolen from our mother. Then Samuel put Tom Chen on the stand. Tom walked the jury through Linda's pattern of fraud, showed them how she'd targeted at least 5 elderly widows in the Charleston area, always with the same story about old family debts or disputed inheritances. Then Samuel played the funeral video. The courtroom went silent. People watched Linda shove me, watched the urn fall, watched her stand over me while I tried to gather my husband's ashes from the floor. The jury deliberated for 2 hours, guilty on all counts. The judge sentenced her to 3 years in prison. Marcus got 18 months. I should have felt victorious. Instead, I just felt empty. Dylan came to see me after the sentencing. He'd testified against his mother, told the truth about how she'd been planning this for months, how she'd pressured him to lie for her. "I'm sorry, Aunt Margaret," he said. "I should have warned you. You were in an impossible position. She's my mother. But what she did was wrong. What she's been doing for years was wrong." I hugged him. He's a good boy. Not a boy anymore, really. He's 29, but he'll always be my nephew. Grace and Thomas came home that weekend. We had a small service in the garden, just family and a few close friends. I'd saved what little ash I could from the funeral home carpet, and we scattered it among Robert's tomatoes and roses. It wasn't the goodbye I'd planned, but it was honest. That was 8 months ago. Linda is in prison. Marcus is out now, living in Colombia, trying to rebuild his life. Dylan visits me every Sunday. We have dinner together, and he tells me about his job, his girlfriend, his plans. The house is mine. The garage is sold. I'm financially secure. I can help my grandchildren with college. I might even take that trip to Ireland next spring. But I learned something through all of this. Family isn't always who you're born to. Sometimes, the people who share your blood are the ones who hurt you most. And sometimes, the family you choose is stronger than the family you're given. I think about Linda sometimes, wonder if she thinks about what she threw away. Not the money, because she never had any claim to it, but our relationship, 40 years of being sisters, and she traded it all for a chance at money that was never hers to begin with. The last time I saw her was at the sentencing. She looked at me across the courtroom, and for just a moment, I saw the little girl I'd raised. The one who used to climb into bed with me during thunderstorms. The one who cried when I left for my wedding because she thought I was leaving her forever. Maybe I should have seen it then. That fear of abandonment, that desperate need for security. Maybe if I'd paid more attention, if I'd gotten her help, things would have been different. But I can't carry that guilt. I did the best I could with what I knew at the time. Grace asked me last week if I'd forgive Linda someday, if, when she gets out of prison, I'd be willing to try again. I don't know. I honestly don't know. Some betrayals are too deep to heal. Some breaks can't be fixed. But I do know this. I'm stronger than I ever knew. I stood up for myself when it would have been easier to give in. I fought for what was right, even when my own children asked me to back down. Robert would be proud of me for that. Sometimes I'll be working in the garden, right where we scattered his ashes, and I'll feel him there. Not in some supernatural way, but in the tomatoes that grow a little bigger each year, in the roses that bloom a little brighter, in the house we built together, the life we shared. Linda tried to take that from me. She tried to make me feel small, undeserving, like I'd stolen something that was never mine. But she was wrong. I deserved every moment of happiness Robert and I shared. I earned it through 43 years of partnership, love, and commitment. Nobody can take that away from me. Not Linda. Not a corrupt legal system. Not even death itself. The love remains. The memories remain. The life we built together remains. And I remain. 68 years old, standing in my garden, tending my tomatoes, planning my trip to Ireland. Still here, still strong, still Margaret. Did you like this story? Have you ever dealt with a family member who betrayed your trust? Sometimes, the people who should love us most are the ones who hurt us deepest. But remember this, you are stronger than their betrayal. You are worthy of the life you've built, and you never have to apologize for protecting yourself and your peace. Share your story in the comments below. Let's support each other, because we all deserve to be heard, to be believed, and to be validated in our pain. And remember, the humblest are often the strongest. They endure, they survive, and they rise. Thank you for listening to my story. I'll see you in the next one.